Hello, my name is Nick Maryhugh. I am a teaching artist with Chicago Arts Partnerships in Education. Thanks for tuning in. This is my second tutorial on the digital audio workstation Reaper. This is a really powerful program for editing audio. And in the last tutorial, I talked a little bit about trimming tracks, importing and exporting, and just kind of getting the super basics down of how to get a piece of audio into the program initially so that you can start working on it. Today we're going to go through a really useful menu called Item Properties that can start to process and edit and adjust the sound, the actual sound of the piece of audio that you're working with. So again, kind of a review from the last tutorial. We're going to start by going Insert. We're going to start by going Insert Track. Got a new track here, and let's call this track 1. And then we're going to add a media file. So we go Insert, down to Media File, click that, and the sample I'm going to use today is a bit of audio that I took from the show Steven Universe. If you're using audio that you don't own the rights to, you can't monetize it, but this is just for a tutorial, and I like to keep a bank of samples of things that resonate with me on my computer, just in case I have a use for them casually. So let's just take a quick listen to what we're working with.
What if it's a ghost? As a skeptic of mortality...
Rock on. I don't know if any of y'all know that episode. They go to a lighthouse, watch a scary movie. There's a ghost. It's a great episode. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Steven Universe. We're here to talk about how to edit this audio. So we're going to right click on this media file and go down here to the second one, Item Properties. And you should get this menu here. Now this is a really powerful menu. We're not going to talk about everything in this menu, but I am going to run you through some of the basics and some of the things that I use really commonly. So the first thing that I'll point out is in the top left. You see this thing that says position 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And you can see that the starting position of our media file is at 0 marker. So if I go into this and I click, let's say 10 seconds. This is minutes, seconds, milliseconds, just so you know. And I click apply. You see that it jumps to the 10-second mark. So if you're really trying to get a very specific starting point for your sample, this is one way you can do it. Obviously, we talked last time that you can just click and drag as well. So this is just another way of doing kind of the same thing, and it can be more precise because you can get it down to the millisecond. So let's drag this back, and you see that this also snaps back to 0. The next thing is this fade in curve, fade out curve. So we talked last time about how if you go to the top left, you get this cursor and you can click, drag, and have a kind of fade in, or top right, click, drag, fade out. This is another way of editing that. The first cool thing about this menu is if you click this, you'll see it brings up these 7 different shapes, and these are different shapes of fade-ins. So this one is quieter for longer and then gets loud quickly. This one starts out getting loud and then kind of like tapers off as it gets to the max. This one is just steady all the way through. And you can see that they all have their own shapes, and they all have their usefulness in different ways, in a different context. So I'm going to click this one. And let's say we want this fade in to be 3 seconds. Click apply. Click apply. And you see now at the 3-second mark, it's reached its max volume. Again, this is a thing you can do from here, just dragging. But this can be a little more precise if you have something that you really want to be down to the millisecond. Now, this function here, curve, kind of adjusts the shape of this curve or the rate of this curve. So right now it's at 1 and it maxes out at 1. But let's say I want this to be a subtler curve. I can click 0.5 and apply. And you see that the shape has kind of smoothed out a little bit. It resembles more closely this shape right here that's just even. It's still curved, It's still the same shape, but it's been made more subtle. I don't use this very often, frankly, but it can be a useful tool, again, if you're trying to make a really precise kind of fade in. I'm going to go and get rid of this fade in. The same thing applies for the fade out. It's really the same function. It just would appear on this side of the track. Cool. We're going to cut down here now to take properties, and this is really the part of the menu that I find the most exciting. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and there's a lot of ways that we can start to kind of adjust the sound of the media file that are really, I think, exciting and cool. So I'm going to focus on just a couple things here. First, let's talk about playback rate. So playback rate is the speed at which your sample plays. So right now it's set to 1, and that means that it's playing at the original recorded rate. It's not faster, it's not slower, it's just however you recorded it. If I want this to be, let's say, 4 times faster, we'll click apply. You'll notice that now I have 4 iterations of this sample. Maybe that's something I want, maybe that's not, but let's take a listen quick.
What is a ghost? What is a ghost? What is a ghost? What is a ghost?
Rock on. Pretty cool. Obviously, this is like a totally different sound now. We've taken this sample. It's pretty hard to hear what he's saying, but we have this kind of cool sonic texture that we can then work with. But let's say I just want 1 iteration of these. You'll notice that, here, let me make this a little bit bigger. You'll notice that there's these kind of indents in the track on the bottom and on the top. And what that's indicating is where the original sample is ending. So if I cut directly to that indent, now I just have 1 iteration of the sample. By the same token, if I want this to loop 20 times, I can click, I can get this cursor to be the arrow and the backwards C, drag it to the right, and it'll just keep generating this sample as long as I want. This isn't necessarily the cleanest way to loop something, but the cool thing about this is just knowing that you have the flexibility to just click and drag and make a lot of sound, which is really helpful. So let's try the opposite. Let's say I want this sample to be half the speed. Click 0.5, apply. And now we have the opposite problem. We don't have 4 iterations, we have no iterations. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click, drag. Oh, I clicked playback rate of 0. That's why that happened. We want a playback rate of 0.5. Let's try that. Okay, now here we are. So now we have the whole sample. We were about here before. And what you want to do is you want to just drag this sample out until you see this indent. And that will tell you, again, that is where the original sample was cut. Now, maybe we don't want all this silence, but we can figure that out later. So let's take a listen to this.
What if it's a ghost? As a skeptic of mortality...
Cool. Obviously, again, a really different sound. You can do this with any sample. You can always adjust the playback rate. You can always adjust kind of the fade-ins, the fade-outs. All of these properties can make some really unique and interesting sounding things. Let's talk about this here, pitch adjust. Pitch adjust means that the pitch, you can change the pitch to be either higher or lower. Semitones are like 1 key on the piano, moving up by 1 black key or 1 white key, whatever is like right next to, if you move just 1 key directly right or left, that would be a semitone. So let's say we want this to be much higher. Let's say we want it to be an octave higher. That would be 12 semitones. And let's click apply, and let's take a listen.
What if it's a ghost? As a skeptic of mortality.
And let's try making it, let's say 6 semitones below the original recording. Click apply. When you're doing below, you want to make sure that you have a negative semitone, so it's going down. Imagine the original. I mean, if you noticed, originally the pitch adjust is 0, so we're going higher than 0 or lower than 0. So if you want to make the pitch lower, you need to add a negative symbol to the number. So let's take this down, -6 semitones.
What if it's a ghost? As a skeptic of mortality.
Great. One more thing about adjusting pitch and playback rate. That's pretty interesting and actually really powerful. You see this checkbox here that says preserve pitch when changing rate. Normally, if you were to make a track faster, it would automatically make the pitch higher. And conversely, if you were to make a track slower, it would bring the pitch down. In Reaper, if you have this box checked, it will adjust those things separately. So we just adjusted the playback rate and it didn't change the pitch. And then we just changed the pitch and it didn't affect the playback rate. If you uncheck this box and you make the track twice as fast, and let's trim it so that it's just this indent here.
What if it's a ghost? As a skeptic of mortality.
You notice that the pitch is much, much higher. So playing with adjusting these things separately can be a really powerful and interesting kind of expressive tool. 2 more quick things in this menu, volume and pan. So remember from last tutorial, we talked about these faders, and this will adjust the volume of everything on this track, on track 1. So if I had 5 or 6 samples in this track, and I only wanted to make this one quieter or this one louder, I could use this volume slider to drag to the left, make it quieter, drag to the right, make it louder, double click to set it back to 0. I don't use this very often. Again, I think there are some other ways of adjusting volume that are a little bit simpler that we'll talk about in later tutorials. But this can be situationally useful, and so it's a good thing to keep in mind. And this guy right here is super powerful. This is called panning, and what panning is, if you were to pan a track, that means that you're creating the experience of it coming out of the left or the right headphone or moving from left to right. It's a way of like adjusting volume to create the experience of the sound moving back and forth. So I'm going to drag, you see here it says 0 dB, that's our volume, center. I'm going to drag this to the left and you see we get this percentage L. So let's go 100% L and take a listen.
What if it's a ghost?
Oh, you got to click apply. Also, I would really recommend that you wear headphones for this part. It'll make it a lot clearer what's happening if you have access to headphones.
What if it's a ghost? As a skeptic of mortality.
Cool. So you can hear that it's only coming out of the left headphone, and you can also see it on the track. This is our left volume. This is our right volume. There's no longer any waveform here. So let's do the opposite. Let's go all the way to the right.
What if it's a ghost? As a skeptic of mortality.
Now it's only coming out of the right headphone. When you're at 0, what's happening is that it's playing the left and the right at the same volume, so it sounds like the sound is coming from the center. If you have one of these more subtle, let's say 50% to the left, you can see that the left is louder. You can see the waveforms are a little bit taller than on the right. So it gives the experience of it being just slightly offset. I'll play that for you real quick.
What if it's a ghost?
You gotta click OK.
What if it's a ghost? As a skeptic of mortality.
So that's a much subtler panning. We're gonna go back to item properties here. That's a much subtler panning. And that can give you, especially if you're working with like drum sounds or something, doing some really subtle panning like that can make the drum kit sound a lot more lively and a lot more interesting. So let's try and synthesize some of these things. Let's add this fade in shape and let's make it 5 seconds with a curve of 1. And let's make it, let's say 4 semitones higher. Let's make it 4 semitones lower. So I'll add that minus sign. And let's play it at 0.6 speed. So it'd be 40% slower. And let's pan it, let's say 75% to the right. Click apply. We'll see that curve come up. We want to make sure that we hit that indent so we get the whole sample. And let's hear that one time.
Ghost? As a skeptic of mortality.
All right. So, maybe this doesn't sound necessarily like a perfect musical track or something, but we have significantly changed the sound of this one sample just by clicking a few buttons. This is such a powerful menu in Reaper. It's such a powerful tool. And it's really, really helpful to have, I think. It's been helpful for me in my practice to have a strong grasp of what these things do. If you have questions, please post them in the comments. I'm going to be doing my next tutorial on how to use your computer keyboard to input, like to use as a virtual kind of piano keyboard, so we can start making some music in Reaper. But if you have other ideas for things that you want to learn, if you have questions about the program, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments. I will be checking the comments periodically, as I mentioned in the last video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this is helpful. I hope you can use some of this information in your own practice. Now is a great time in this quarantine to be making lots of art. So I hope this gives you some tools that you can use. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to y'all soon.